Good evening, everyone. Welcome to News in a Snap. I'm Charlie Charlington. In recent news, it appears as though things are beginning to heat up with the console wars. We have a reporter on site. Charles? Thanks, Charlie. What started as just two companies trying to make games for people to enjoy has quickly become a battle of billion-dollar companies showing that you don't need to release good games, you just need enough money to outbuy the competition. To give us more information about what's happening in the wars, we now turn to Jared from Snap, a local historian who has been following the wars for some time now. He has also informed me that you should subscribe to the channel. He says that it's entirely free, and you can always unsubscribe later, so there's no risk. Actually, that's pretty good. Hold on. And now for the history. Jared? Thanks, Charles. Over the years, gaming companies have been fighting over who's the best. From promoting how they have the most bits to the types of games they have available only on their consoles, gaming companies have fought viciously. These battles, to which many call now the console wars, have been going on for years. But what are these battles about? How are we involved as consumers? When are these battles gonna end? Well, to answer these questions, we have to go back. To the beginning of time. Back to a simpler time. Back to the 80s. The console wars actually began back in the 1980s and 90s between Sega and Nintendo. Yes, technically there was a previous console war, but it was between two consoles that pretty much had the same thing, and both of the games look nearly identical, so we're just not going to talk about it. It's fine. Starting in Japan, both companies were simply trying to make their marks in the new world of gaming. When Nintendo released the Famicom, it became one of the best-selling consoles in Japan in 1984. Meanwhile, Sega was trying to do the same with the Sega SG-1000 console, but it didn't quite reach the same heights as Nintendo. The two companies tried everything they could to gain the #1 spot in gaming, including going international. Over the years, the two companies began to better their consoles, and, in the 80s, the two companies released what would go on to be two of the best-known consoles yet. The Nintendo Entertainment System, better known as the NES, and the Sega Genesis, better known as the Sega Genesis.
Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too!
Other companies tried to introduce their own consoles, but Nintendo and Sega being the bullies they are, "You can't play with us."
Why?
"Because we're better than you."
And we have so much more money than you. But guys, I just want to make games like the rest of you. Get out of here! We have better graphics, better sales, we're international!
"Yeah, what do you have? You don't got nothing." What started as just two companies trying to better their games and consoles for their players quickly became all-out attacks. The best examples can be just seen in their commercials, including this one, which has pretty much become a meme now.
It's free. What Nintendo?
This console war was getting out of hand. Somebody needed to stop it. Somebody like Sony. "You're not so strong and rich like us." Huh. We'll just leave. Sorry. Sony sold so many consoles that with the release of the PlayStation 2, they solidified their place in gaming history. In fact, the PlayStation 2 is still the best-selling home console of all time. For Sony, it's not about the money, it's about creating a fun environment for everyone to enjoy. Personally, I'm impressed that Sony hasn't attacked any other company. Sony is truly being an inspiring leader of what game companies should be more like. Not worried about trying to be better than others, but just making a really fun environment. So thanks, Sony, for... Sony? 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 Sony heard the saying, "You either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain," and took that to heart. Now that Sony was the king of the hill, they wanted to keep that position for themselves. This is where Microsoft comes into play. Releasing the Xbox 360 in 2005, Microsoft was able to show people that home gaming consoles could do so much more than just play games. Instead, this console would go on to show how it could be used as a home entertainment device, able to stream shows and play DVDs. It looked incredible. Sony's response? Well, Sony wanted to revolutionize the next generation of gaming. Their PlayStation 2 was a masterpiece, so their PlayStation 3 had to do something brand new.
PS3, now $299.
PlayStation.
They did the exact same thing, except rather than just play DVDs, it could play Blu-rays now. But on the other hand, they also didn't self-destruct like the Xbox 360 with the red ring of death. By the way, did you guys know that Microsoft paid over $1 billion just to repair that? That's insane. That's also why Sony is a part of Snap and Microsoft isn't. Oh! Similar to Sony and Nintendo, they began to attack each other through different means. Xbox tested out a hands-free method of controlling games, leading to the Kinect. Sony did the same thing. But then Microsoft got exclusive rights to certain games, allowing them to only be played on an Xbox device. Sony did that too. Are you starting to see a pattern here? Wait. Microsoft and Sony consoles both do just about the same things. Sure, there's different games on each, but at a base level, both seem to be capable of just about the same thing. They both had well-beloved games, both had add-ons that worked, and others that didn't. So, is this a war between the consoles? Or the companies? But it can't be. Was there ever a war with us involved? Maybe we can stop these wars entirely. Maybe it's not too late. Sony and Microsoft have continued fighting even into this generation of gaming. The Xbox Series X and S against the PlayStation 5 to be more specific. But recently, Microsoft began making some weird plays. First, they decided that they were no longer fighting against Sony and the PlayStation. Which means that they gave up! Ever wonder why it's called Snap and not Manap? It's because we won the war! Yeah, instead they wanted to go against the likes of Netflix and other streaming services. When they aren't watching shows or films, they could be playing games. Microsoft also decided to take a new approach of, if you can't beat them, buy them out. Now, I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news with Microsoft trying to buy Activision Blizzard for the past 2 years, but it looks like we're just about done. Now, it wasn't sold for a cheap amount. For $68.7 For $68.7 billion, Activision Blizzard was sold. It seems as though these major gaming companies are no longer fighting against each other, but are now just buying the competition out. And it doesn't seem like Microsoft is going to stop there. They seem to be paving a new way of the console wars, where everyone is fighting, but from a distance. Microsoft found their groove with buying out the competition, releasing some games here and there. Sony tries to deliver the best gaming experience overall, promoting their graphics and speed with exclusive games, sometimes even buying the rights to have those games be exclusive for at least a limited time, which, even as a Sony fan, I have to admit, that is a bit low. Even Nintendo was able to find their group of gamers with the Nintendo Switch and Wii. Also, before anyone mentions it down in the comments, yes, the Wii was part of the console wars, but it was mainly fighting to make a gaming experience best for the entire family. Even though the PlayStation 4 won that console war, the Wii seemed to be leading the console wars into peace. The console wars were an interesting period in gaming. The reason I use past tense is mainly because I think they're just about over. Microsoft isn't going against Sony anymore. Nintendo and Sega actually seem to be on good terms now, with some games integrating both licenses of their characters. In the future, it's entirely possible that some new company could rise to the challenge to take on these companies, but I find that really unlikely. We've reached a point in gaming that consoles are just that, a console. Instead, the main focus now seems to be the companies that make the game and how much they're worth. I do see more arguments in legal cases like the one between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, but for the most part, the wars are over. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo have found their players.
We would like to play.
At the end of the day, play on the console that you want to, whether it's PlayStation, Xbox, the Nintendo Switch, even the computer. But regardless of what console you pick, just take a minute with me to remember the consoles that we lost along the way through the wars. Perhaps we can build a better future, where gaming companies will be able to create a game that everyone can enjoy. From hardcore to relaxed. To these fallen consoles, we salute you. Thank you for all that you have done. Anyway, it does seem as though the console wars are pretty much over. All we can do now is wait to see what the future will hold. I'm Jared, Snap News. Thanks, Jared. When we come back, the story behind Arnold Schwarzenegger's new weight loss program, Hasta la vista, baby fat. What do you mean I can't say that on the air? It's Schwarzenegger. That's how he says it. What do you mean? What? If you fire me, you gotta take the whole team. You can take the news out of Charlie Charlington, but you can't take the Charlie Charlington out of news.